Heartbeat on the other side. Chapter 1, The Betrayal of the Heart. The clouds in the sky are like broken mirrors, reflecting the dappled light and shadows on the ground. Chu Mingche, this name has long become taboo in this family. He was forgotten by his father because of heart problems since he was a child, and even his name became insignificant. The two elder brothers of the Chu family, Chu Cheng and Chu Heng, always turned a blind eye to him, as if his existence was just a proof of his father's infidelity to his mother. Mingche, how many bad things do you have to do to get their attention? Mother's words still echo in my ears. In the dead of night, Chu Mingche always hid in the corner and cried silently. He knew that all this was just a matter of fate. In order to get the attention of his brothers, he began to do some things that everyone was angry with, from stealing his family's assets to designing to frame Chu Cheng and Chu Heng's business rivals. He even took care of the white moonlight in the hearts of his brothers by Fengdi, a weak and beautiful woman, who was Chu Heng's fiancée who had never married. However, all these actions did not seem to change Chu Cheng and Chu Heng's attitude towards him. On the contrary, what he did only deepened their hatred of him. That night, Chu Mingche challenged all the bottom lines, and he made a secret letter from Bai Fengdi public, humiliating her dignity. At this moment, he knew he could never turn back. Bai Fengdi's eyes were full of tears, which was not only a disappointment to Chu Cheng, but also a grief for his own irreparable emotions. And Chu Cheng and Chu Heng's anger erupted instantly, and they locked Chu Mingche in the confinement room. However, Chu Mingche in the confinement room did not regret the pain. He coughed, gasped for breath, and said to himself with a smile, "Anyway, everything is irreparable." At that moment, a sharp pain in the heart swept over. A tingling pain in my chest and difficulty breathing. This time, he knew he couldn't escape. Chapter 2, The Cycle of Remorse. Chu Mingche's world gradually blurred, and in his ears were the roars of his brothers, as well as the silent crying of Bai Fengdi. He felt like his life was like a fragile thread that was breaking. Just as he was about to close his eyes, a familiar warmth struck. Clear, clear. It was Chu Cheng's voice, anxious and helpless, with a trace of irrepressible pain. "Why are you doing that? Do you know how much pain we'd have if you're not there?" His voice trembled, and his clear heart beat weaker and weaker. With a sharp pain, he lost consciousness. When he woke up again, he found himself lying in a hospital bed. The dim lights around reflect the familiar figures. Chu Cheng sat on the edge of the bed, with unconcealable exhaustion and anxiety in his eyes, while Chu Heng stood aside, holding the hand of the white phoenix butterfly in his hand. "Mingche, are you awake?" Chu Cheng's voice sounded extremely gentle, which was in stark contrast to his usual indifference. "Brother." Chu Mingche's voice trembled, full of uncertainty and doubt. "What's going on? Why are you here?" "Because of you, of course." Chu Heng slowly walked to the side of the bed, his eyes were deep. "I've been worried about you." Bai Fengdi also bowed her head slightly, a trace of complicated emotions flashed in her eyes, but she still gently held Chu Mingche's hand. All this was like a nightmare for Chu Mingche. These days, the indifference of his brothers and the sadness of Bai Fengdi made him feel endless loneliness and loss. Now, when he heard them say this, he was both surprised and confused. "Do you really care about me?" Chu Mingche couldn't help but ask, with a look of disbelief in his eyes. "Of course." Chu Cheng's eyes softened, revealing a rare trace of pain. "We've been there all along, but you haven't noticed." Chu Mingche's heart was shocked when he heard this. He never thought that his brothers would have such a reaction. Could it be that all this misunderstanding is just a misunderstanding? Chapter 3, The Rebirth of the Heartbeat. As time passed, Chu Mingche's days in the hospital bed became longer and longer. The white walls of the hospital seemed to isolate him from everything he had been. He began to think back to all these years, those faults, those who had hurt him, and suddenly became blurred. He began to wonder what he had done wrong. Bai Fengdi didn't seem to alienate him because of this, but often stayed by his bedside, quietly guarding him. Chu Cheng and Chu Heng were no longer as indifferent as before, they would chat with him and even provide him with care. This change confused Chu Mingche and made him begin to realize his mistake. One day, Chu Mingche couldn't help but ask, "Why would you do this to me? I hated you so much before, why can you forgive me like that?" Chu Cheng was silent for a moment, and then said in a low voice, "Mingche, we shouldn't treat you so coldly. In fact, we have been hiding the pain in our hearts. Do you know? We are also at fault, and we have not been able to face our own indifference to you all these years. Your father has done a lot of wrong things to you, and we don't know what to do with this guilt over the years." Chu Heng's tone was equally heavy, but now, we hope to make up for it, although it may be too late. Bai Fengdi also said softly, I know, I have always known the pain in your heart. Actually, there are also many things that have not been told to you. After Chu Mingche heard this, he had mixed feelings in his heart. It's all like an intricate labyrinth, and he's always thought he's alone, when it's not. Chapter 4, The Depths of Misplace. As time passed, Chu Mingche gradually recovered his health, but his mood became heavier and heavier. Because he began to realize that everything he had done, whether it was the fight with his brothers or the damage to Bai Fengdi, could not be easily remedied. However, as the days went by, Chu Cheng and Chu Heng's attitudes changed. They gradually let go of their past prejudices and were willing to move forward hand in hand with him, and Bai Fengdi finally confessed the guilt in his heart. However, there is still a question in Chu Mingche's heart that has not been solved. Is all this change really due to his own repentance, or is it some kind of fateful arrangement? He began to wonder if it was all a dream or a reincarnation of fate. Is it only after his so-called rebirth that their emotions really begin? Or has he fallen into a deeper misunderstanding? Is all this really a rebirth given to him by fate? And will his silent heart finally be able to regain the beat it once lost? Chapter 5, The Vortex of Emotion. Chu Mingche gradually began to get used to the silence and treatment these days, and his heart disease no longer threatened his life at any time as before, but became more stable. However, behind this stability, he began to feel as if his life was being pulled by some invisible force and could not break free. The appearance of the white phoenix butterfly is undoubtedly the biggest variable in his life during this time. Her care and companionship for him made Chu Mingche feel a contradictory emotion in his heart. She used to be the white moonlight in the hearts of his brothers, and that pure love is now intertwined into an intricate web between him and his brothers. Feng Dai, one night, Chu Mingche called her softly, You don't really mean it to me, right? I've done those things that hurt you and hurt myself, how can you possibly forgive me? Bai Fengdi looked at him with a hint of gloom in her eyes, I have already forgiven you, Mingche. I'm not here because of my brothers, I want you to know a fact. Chu Mingche frowned slightly, he knew that he had never really understood her heart, and behind every smile of Bai Fengdi, there seemed to be countless unspoken secrets. I used to have pain. Bai Fengdi was silent for a moment, and her tone became low, back then, neither your brother Cheng nor Hung saw me. You think you're the only one who has ever been hurt, but I'm more in pain than you are. She paused and continued, I had a deep relationship with Chu Cheng, but he chose my father's request and put our love in the corner. Then, your brother and I began to slowly become close, but he has not been able to get out of that past. I thought I could let go, but I couldn't let go of that emotion. Chu Mingche listened to her words, and the waves in his heart kept surging. He thought that he had always been a lonely existence, but he didn't expect that in this emotional whirlpool, everyone has their own pain, and he himself is only a part of it. All of you still have unresolved knots. Chu Mingche said in a low voice, So, what am I? Bai Fengdi was silent, just put her hand on his shoulder. There was an indescribable tenderness in her eyes, but there was also a hint of helplessness. Chapter 6, The Wrong Love. A few days later, Chu Cheng finally had a long conversation with Chu Mingche again. This time, instead of being as indifferent as before, he sat on the edge of the bed with deep eyes. Mingche, Chu Cheng spoke, his tone not as cold as before, but with a rare sincerity, I think we need to really face the problems between ourselves. Chu Cheng's words shocked Chu Mingche's heart, and those opposing emotions in the past seemed to have a hint of the possibility of melting at that moment. You're right, we haven't really seen you. Chu Cheng's gaze softened, with a little guilt in his eyes. Maybe you have never felt your father's love, but Hung and I have always thought that you were just an insignificant existence, I'm sorry. Chu Mingche didn't respond immediately, and his mood became complicated. Over the years, he has sought the attention of his brothers, but has never truly understood their struggles. But now. Chu Cheng took a deep breath, we don't want you to do these things anymore, we just hope you can forgive us. How can I not forgive you? Chu Mingche's voice was low, and the tears in his eyes that couldn't be hidden made him look extremely vulnerable. I did something wrong and caused you a lot of trouble. Chu Cheng stretched out his hand and patted him lightly on the shoulder, his tone was a little helpless. Mingche, our father was unfair to you, but you should also know that as our brother, we should have cared about you earlier. Chu Mingche listened quietly, and he suddenly felt an invisible pressure, as if there was a force that was silently changing the relationship between them. underscore 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 un. Chapter 7, The Reversal of Fate. A few days later, Chu Mingche unexpectedly learned a secret. That day, he rummaged through the family's old study and stumbled upon a letter that his father had never sent. In the letter, his father expressed his deep guilt for him, and even his excessive preference for Chu Cheng and Chu Heng, which made him unbearable. Every word in this letter made him feel that he was not an abandoned person, and his father actually felt a little guilty at the end. When he handed the letter to Chu Cheng and Chu Heng, the two elder brothers were silent. They couldn't hide the shock and pain in their hearts. It turned out that their father's feelings were more complicated than they knew. The discovery of this letter seems to have unraveled a larger mystery to some extent. Their father's faults, their former indifference, and their misunderstanding of Chu Mingche were all like a mountain, pressing on their hearts. We've missed a lot of things over the years. Chu Cheng said in a low voice, an indescribable emotion surging in his eyes, but at least for now, we can make up for some. Chu Mingche listened to their words, and gradually felt a little relieved in his heart. Perhaps, this is the arrangement of fate. When he thought that everything was irreparable, it was the deepest pain that made them gradually reconcile. Underscore 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 un. Epilogue. The Truth of the Heartbeat. After a few months, Chu Mingche's heart disease finally stabilized, but the confusion in his heart did not disappear with time. He was still unsure if all this change was a trick of fate or their sincerity. But he knew that no matter what, the company of his brothers and Bai Fengdi allowed him to find his long-lost strength. He no longer doubts whether he is forgotten, he no longer doubts whether he is destined to be alone. His world began to have a different color. On a sunny afternoon, Chu Mingche stood in the family garden, quietly listening to the faint heartbeat. At this moment, he finally understood, the real heartbeat is not just the body's reaction, but every deep emotional resonance, it is the once broken emotion, and finally found a new rhythm. And all of this, starting with that unsent letter, changed his life.